Here's an expanded version of Part 1, First Contact in a more engaging, human-centric style. The night sky over the small research station felt different. Jay Park had been working at the remote observatory for years, but something about tonight sent a chill down his spine. His fingers hovered over the computer keyboard, watching a series of unexplained blips dancing across the monitor. Outside, the mountains of South Korea stretched like silent guardians, their peaks cutting through a blanket of mist. Jay wasn't the type to get excited easily. He was a practical guy, a 35-year-old researcher who preferred numbers and data over wild theories. But tonight was different. The first signal came quietly, a subtle interference that most would have missed, but Jay had spent countless nights staring at these screens, and he knew something was off. The radio frequency wasn't like anything he'd seen before. It wasn't human, and it definitely wasn't natural. His colleague Mina burst through the door, a steaming cup of coffee in her hand. "Another late night?" she asked, noticing the intense concentration on Jay's face. Before he could answer, the screen flickered. Numbers danced, algorithms went crazy, and for a split second something that looked like a massive structure appeared. "Did you see that?" Jay whispered, his voice caught between excitement and disbelief. Mina leaned closer. The coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Neither of them noticed. The observatory was located in a remote mountain region, far from the bustling cities of Seoul. It was a place where silence spoke louder than words, where the boundaries between known and unknown seemed to blur. Jay had always loved this about his job, the possibility of discovering something extraordinary. What they didn't know was that something extraordinary was about to discover them. The signal repeated, this time stronger, more deliberate. It was almost like a message, but from where? From whom? Jay's hands moved quickly, capturing every bit of data, recording every microscopic change in the electromagnetic waves. Outside, the wind picked up. The mountain trees swayed, casting long shadows that seemed to dance with an otherworldly rhythm. Mina checked the weather reports. Nothing unusual. No satellites, no explained astronomical events, no military exercises, just silence. And that signal. Jay remembered why he became a researcher in the first place, not for fame, not for glory, but for those moments of pure discovery. The moments when the universe decides to reveal a tiny piece of its massive, mysterious puzzle. "We need to document everything," he told Mina, his voice steady but excited. "Every single detail." Little did they know this was just the beginning. Something was watching, something was waiting, and humanity was about to receive an invitation it could never have imagined. The first contact wasn't going to be loud or dramatic. It was going to be subtle, precise, calculated, just like this moment. In the background, computer screens continued to flicker. The signal repeated, waiting, watching. Something was coming, and Jay Park was about to be the first to know. "Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story, maintaining this engaging and human-centric approach?" Part 2. Unexpected observations. The world hadn't changed overnight, but something felt different. Jay knew it. The research team had been working around the clock, analyzing every fragment of data from that mysterious night. What they discovered was beyond anything they could have imagined. Hyun worked as a mountain rescue specialist in the rugged peaks of Gangwon province. He wasn't a scientist or a researcher, just an ordinary guy who had dedicated his life to saving people in impossible situations. On that particular winter morning, everything would change. The rescue mission started like any other. A group of hikers had gone missing during a severe snowstorm. Temperatures had dropped to -20 degrees. Winds were cutting through the mountain. Like razor blades, most rescue teams would have waited. Most would have considered the mission impossible. But Hyun wasn't most people. He remembered his grandfather's stories, tales of survival that seemed to defy all logical explanation. How his grandfather survived the Korean War, how he walked days without food, how he carried wounded soldiers through impossible terrain. Those stories weren't just memories, they were lessons. The rescue helicopter couldn't land. The storm was too violent, too unpredictable. Hyun made a decision that would later become legendary in rescue circles. He would climb alone, with minimal equipment. Hours passed. The research team at the observatory tracked something extraordinary. Not just Hyun's movements, but something else. An energy signature that seemed to dance around him. It wasn't technology. It wasn't natural. It was something in between. Mina's computer screens went crazy. Patterns emerged that didn't make sense. Mathematical sequences that broke every known scientific rule. The signal they detected earlier seemed to be responding to Hyun's movements. "This is impossible," she muttered, adjusting her glasses. But impossible was becoming a matter of perspective. Hyun found the hikers. Not just found them, saved them. In conditions where survival seemed like a cruel joke, he managed to keep 4 people alive. When they were rescued and examined, doctors couldn't explain how they survived. No frostbite, minimal hypothermia. It was as if something had protected them. The research team began connecting dots. The mysterious signal, Hyun's impossible rescue, the strange energy signatures. Something was watching. Something was protecting. But why? Back at the observatory, Jay and Mina worked tirelessly. They weren't just collecting data anymore. They were trying to understand a puzzle that seemed to have no logical solution. Each discovery raised more questions than answers. The hikers couldn't explain what happened. They remembered Hyun arriving, remembered his calm voice. But something else happened. Something they couldn't quite put into words. A feeling of protection, of being watched over. "It's like we weren't alone," one of the rescued hikers told reporters. But not in a scary way, in a protective way. Hyun became a national hero. But he didn't feel like a hero. He felt like something had guided him, something beyond human understanding. The research team knew they were onto something big. This wasn't just about a mysterious signal anymore. This was about understanding a force that seemed to exist between the lines of human perception. Something was communicating. Something was watching. And humanity was just beginning to listen. The unexpected observations were just the beginning of a journey that would challenge everything they thought they knew about existence, survival, and the thin line between the possible and the impossible. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story, maintaining this engaging and human-centric approach? Part 3. Emotional Complexity. The flood came without warning. One moment, the small riverside community was peaceful. The next, water consumed everything in its path. Destruction rolled through like a merciless giant, sweeping away homes, memories, and hope. Sung Min stood at the edge of the disaster zone. He wasn't just a researcher anymore. He was a witness to something extraordinary about human nature. The water had risen faster than anyone could predict, trapping dozens of people in impossible situations. Ji-woo was an ordinary school teacher. Nobody would have called him a hero before that day. But when the flood hit, something inside him changed. He saw a young child trapped on a rooftop, separated from her parents. No one else could reach her. The current was too strong, the risk too great. Nobody expected what happened next. Ji-woo didn't hesitate. He fashioned a makeshift rope from electrical cables and construction materials left behind by rescue workers. The other survivors tried to stop him. "It's suicide," they shouted. But Ji-woo had already made his decision. The water raged like an angry beast. Each step was a battle against nature's fury. Ji-woo wasn't thinking about survival. He was thinking about the child, about her parents, about the promise of a life that deserved a chance. Sung Min watched through advanced monitoring equipment. The research team had been tracking human emotional responses, but this was different. This wasn't just an action. This was pure, raw, human spirit. The child's name was Yeonji, 6 years old. Her small pink backpack was still clutched tightly, a symbol of childhood innocence against the chaos. When Ji-woo reached her, she wasn't crying. She was waiting, believing someone would come. Rescue workers later said it was impossible. The calculations didn't make sense. The water's force, the distance, the makeshift rescue method, everything suggested failure. But Ji-woo didn't know about calculations. He only knew about hope. They survived. When Ji-woo finally reached safety with Yeonji, something remarkable happened. The entire community erupted in emotion. Strangers hugged. People who had lost everything celebrated this single moment of triumph. Sungmin's research team couldn't comprehend what they were seeing. This wasn't just a rescue. This was a demonstration of something far more complex than any scientific model could explain. Humans don't just survive, Sungmin told his colleagues. They transform survival into something beautiful. The flood destroyed physical structures, but it revealed something more powerful. A network of human connection that couldn't be measured by technology or explained by logic. Complete strangers worked together. People who had lost everything shared what little they had. An elderly woman shared her last package of rice with a family she had never met. A young construction worker carried an injured elderly man miles to safety. A group of teenagers formed a human chain to rescue trapped animals. These weren't just actions. They were statements about humanity. Yeonji's parents, when they were finally reunited, didn't just cry. They transformed their fear into gratitude. Jiwoo became more than a rescuer. He became a symbol of something greater. The research team realized they were witnessing something profound. Humans weren't just a species that survived. They were a species that found meaning in survival, that turned tragedy into hope, that could love beyond reason. Sungmin looked at his complex monitoring equipment, all those advanced sensors, sophisticated algorithms, and yet they couldn't capture the true essence of what he was seeing: emotion, connection, sacrifice, something no technology could ever fully understand. Would you like me to continue with the next part of the story, maintaining this engaging and human-centric approach? Part 4, Technological Paradox. The small research lab buzzed with an electric tension. Computers hummed, screens flickered, and in the center of it all stood Dae-hyun, a brilliant young engineer who had always believed technology could change the world. But today was different. On one side of the lab, complex medical equipment demonstrated humanity's capacity for healing. Dae-hyun's team had just completed a breakthrough treatment that could potentially cure a rare genetic disorder affecting children. Microscopic nanobots, carefully programmed, could now target specific genetic mutations with unprecedented precision. Across the room, another group of researchers worked on something entirely different. Advanced weapon systems designed with terrifying efficiency. Missile guidance technologies that could hit a target thousands of miles away with pinpoint accuracy. Two sides of the same human coin. Dae-hyun understood the paradox better than anyone. His own grandfather had survived the Korean War, witnessed both the most brutal destruction and the most incredible acts of human compassion. Those stories had shaped his entire worldview. The medical breakthrough could save thousands of lives. Children who would have died would now have a chance to grow, to dream, to live. Each tiny nanobot was a miracle of human innovation, a testament to our ability to understand and manipulate the most complex systems of life. But the weapon system represented something else entirely. Precision, power, the ability to destroy with surgical accuracy. During a team meeting, Dae-hyun challenged his colleagues. "We're not just creating technology," he said, his voice calm but passionate. "We're creating possibilities, both good and bad." Nobody in the room could argue. Outside the lab, the world continued its complex dance. In one corner of a hospital, doctors used advanced imaging technology to detect cancer in its earliest stages. In another part of the world, the same technological principles were being used to create more destructive military equipment. The same human hands that could heal could also destroy. Dae-hyun remembered his grandfather's stories about survival. How technology had both saved and threatened generations. How innovation was a double-edged sword that could build or demolish civilizations. His team was working on a revolutionary prosthetic limb, advanced neural interfaces that could help paralyzed individuals walk again. Each component was a miracle of human imagination. Sensors that could read brain signals, motors that could mimic human muscle movement, materials that could adapt and respond like living tissue. But technology was more than just machines and algorithms. It was a reflection of human potential. The key research team discovered something profound. It wasn't about the technology itself. It was about the intention behind it. The same human creativity that could design life-saving medical equipment could also create tools of destruction. Dae-Hyun often spoke about responsible innovation. "We're not just engineers," he would tell his students. "We're architects of human potential." In the lab, complex algorithms danced across screens. Simulations ran, showing both potential medical treatments and advanced weapon systems. Each line of code was a testament to human complexity. The technological paradox wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a reality to be understood. Humanity wasn't defined by its tools. It was defined by how those tools were used. Hope and destruction, creation and elimination, all existing in the same moment, in the same human hands. The research continued. The possibilities remained endless, and in the center of it all stood Dae-Hyun, witnessing the incredible, terrifying, beautiful potential of human innovation. Would you like me to continue with the final part of the story, maintaining this engaging and human-centric approach? Part 5. The final conclusion. The observation room fell silent. Years of research, countless sleepless nights, and millions of data points had led to this moment. Jay Park stood at the center, surrounded by his team, holding a report that would change everything humanity understood about itself. They weren't just scientists anymore. They were storytellers of the human experience. The mysterious signals that began years ago had revealed something far beyond simple extraterrestrial communication. It was a comprehensive study of human potential, a journey through the most complex species in the known universe. Ji-Hun, the youngest researcher, looked exhausted but excited. "We're not just explaining humanity," he said. "We're understanding its soul." The report wasn't just scientific data. It was a narrative of survival, hope, and inexplicable resilience. They had tracked extraordinary human moments: the mountain rescue that defied physical limitations, the flood survivor who transformed community connections, the technological innovations that simultaneously healed and threatened existence. What made humans truly unique wasn't their intelligence. It was their ability to transform impossibility into opportunity. The research team discovered something profound. Humans didn't just adapt to challenges, they reimagined them. Where other species would collapse, humans would innovate. Where logic suggested surrender, human spirit demanded progress. Take the story of Hyun, the mountain rescuer. Traditional survival metrics suggested he should have failed. The storm was too intense, the terrain too dangerous. But he succeeded through something beyond calculation, an internal drive that couldn't be quantified. Or Ji-Woo, who rescued a child during the flood. Mathematical probability suggested his mission was suicide. Yet he succeeded, driven by something more powerful than statistical likelihood. The technological paradox demonstrated another remarkable human trait. The same species that could design weapons of mass destruction could also create medical technologies saving millions of lives, not as a contradiction, but as a complex expression of potential. "Humans are not a problem to be solved," Jay told his team. "They are a phenomenon to be experienced." Their conclusion wasn't just scientific, it was philosophical. Humanity existed in the spaces between logic and emotion, between destruction and creation, between individual survival and collective progression. The mysterious signals they had initially detected, they weren't a threat, they were an observation, an acknowledgement of humanity's extraordinary nature. Some moments defined their research, more than others, like when communities rebuilt after natural disasters, when strangers helped each other without expectation, when individual acts of courage transformed collective experiences. Humans didn't just survive. They transformed survival into an art form. The final report wasn't about proving something, it was about celebrating something. The complexity of human experience couldn't be reduced to algorithms or mathematical models. It was a living, breathing, continuously evolving narrative. Jay looked at his team. Tired eyes, passionate hearts. They had become more than researchers. They were witnesses to the most incredible story in the universe. "We're not just documenting a species," he said softly. We're recording hope. The observation room remained silent, but it was a meaningful silence, the kind that happens when something profound is about to be understood. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was perfectly unpredictable. And in that unpredictability lay its most extraordinary power. Would you like me to provide any additional details or modify the story in any way?